Welcome to Dialogue, your source for on-campus debate. This week, Andrew Lacy, editor of the Nebraska Thinker, and Kyle Citta, opinion columnist for the Daily Nebraskan, sat down in two incredibly tacky chairs in the Daily Nebraskan studio to talk about socialism, healthcare, the Olympics, and more. Socialism is something we're hearing a lot about right now. Conservative critics have called Obama socialist. They say his healthcare plan is socialized medicine, that the bailouts were socialist. But what does that actually mean? What is socialism, and is Obama actually a socialist? Kyle?
No. Andrew?
Socialism is a political and economic system under which the means of production are owned largely by the community, or more often in practice, usually by the government. We're seeing a little bit of a move toward that in the sense that suddenly now GM is government run after the bailouts, and I'm a little hesitant about going so far as to call Obama a socialist. I do think he's a bit of an authoritarian moving toward larger government, but I'm not sure he's quite a full-blown European-style socialist.
Well, Kyle, would you agree that Obama's authoritarian?
I wouldn't agree he's authoritarian. I actually do. This is weird. I thought we would really diverge here. I agree that there's socialist proclivities to some of his policies, but I don't think necessarily that that's a bad thing. Some socialism is good. There has to be a happy marriage between a pure capitalist society and a pure socialist society. I think that's really what creates a good society in general. But to say he's authoritarian, I would just disagree on that point.
Right. So now going on in this discussion about terms, at these Tea Party protests that are popping up everywhere, people are accusing Obama of being a fascist and a socialist at the same time. Are socialism and fascism even related, Kyle?
They're related, but they are extremely distinct. And I think anybody that can confuse the two or gets the two basically equating one with the other is really showing ignorance on their part about what the political theory behind both is.
So what's the difference there? What are they missing?
Well, they're right in the fact that socialism and fascism does imply a certain nationalization, a certain government takeover of institutions. That is correct. But I'd also argue that just because something is being government takeover does not a fascist make. It's a typical case of necessary sufficiency cases. Just this is logic 101. But to actually say that socialism and fascism are the same, it's socially fascism looks more to unite the country through a militarism. It looks to say that the military has this romantic notion and that people are birthed and the nation as a whole is birthed from an organic whole from the military aspect of it. And socialism actually is a purely economic idea. And that's where it differs from communism, where communism is the political and economic side of it.
Right. So do you see any hint of fascism in Obama's philosophy?
I wouldn't say fascism. My thing is, when you say something like fascism, communism, these things both imply that the government has complete control. There is no freedom in that society. And one thing I think people get messed up with is this notion of you have communists on the extreme left and fascists on the extreme right, but that's a bad interpretation of a political spectrum, because in fact those distinctions come solely because in European parliaments the communists sit on the far left of the building and the fascists sit on the far right. In reality, the spectrum I look at is more in terms of freedom, where your extremes are anarchy versus tyranny. And when the United States was formed, we tried to find the happy medium between those two, where there's enough law and enough, I guess, government control to keep things in order, but still most of the freedom lied with the people. So to say that communism, fascism, socialists, whatever, are related in some sense, they are to the extent that they rely more on, there's more government control than what was originally intended with this country, and in turn that results in less freedom for the people.
Right. Last month, Nancy Pelosi gave a tearful little statement talking about how the rhetoric that she's hearing in this country reminds her of the political atmosphere in San Francisco in the late 1970s. And that was when Dan White assassinated Mayor George Moscone and Harvey Milk. And so she was implying essentially that the conservative movement in this country is getting so angry that violence could erupt. Is that an actual threat, Andrew?
No. This this is nothing new. The people have always been divided. They've always been fighting back and forth. You know, we're not so far removed from people screaming Bush is Hitler and all those sorts of things. It happens on both sides. It's become a normal part of American politics.
So are the anti-Obama protesters essentially the same as the anti-Bush protesters were?
I think the spirit can be interpreted the same way. I'll just say this, and I'm sure this might shock some people. The anti-Bush protesters can be just as dumbass as the anti-Obama protesters, okay? There is so much dumbassness running across the spectrum, it absolutely blows my mind sometimes. So, I mean, that being said, is it a problem? I really don't see violence coming out of this. I think really what's at the heart of this is lazy intellectualism, people not understanding what's actually being said, what's actually going on. And weirdly enough, I agree with Andrew. I really am not seeing a problem with all of this. I think it's people bitching. It happened with Obama. It happened with Bush. It'll happen to some poor schmuck that gets it in the future.
So Andrew, do you agree with Kyle that essentially what's at the root of this is intellectual laziness, people not understanding the issues?
I don't know that I'd really say laziness or a lack of understanding. I just think people get so passionate about what they believe that they want to go out and they want to make their voice heard one way or another, and the fact of the matter is the way the media report things and the way that politicians act, it's only the people who are going to scream loudest who will get the attention.